and welcome to my video series Write, Rewrite, where I'm taking you with me chapter by chapter on what I've learned in writing the Breakout novel and giving you my take on the talking points, because I believe the information in this book is priceless for writers at any stage in their career. Whether you're a seasoned novelist or a budding writer, this book will help you compose your stories more thoughtfully and bring them to heights that are unforgettable to those who read them. Now let's not waste any more time and dive right into the first chapter, ingeniously named Premise. And it focuses on the 4 key ingredients to any great novel: plausibility, inherent conflict, originality, and gut emotional appeal. Let's go. Key ingredient number 1, plausibility. Maass says, like the best lies, a breakout premise has a grain of truth. It is that truth that persuades us to care and convinces us that a story contains the stuff of life. A breakout premise comes from someplace real. I certainly don't disagree to that, but full disclosure, plausible plot premises don't register high on this author's list of needs when constructing a novel. I write paranormal romance. My subjects are already based on well-known lore and fairy tales, and they've been written about 100 times over. So as far as plausibility goes, the groundwork has been done for me. Come here. Yes. So the groundwork's been done for me. And in turn, I'm a bit more lenient in making sure that I achieve that plausible premise. However, Dorcas, I'll kill you. Okay. However, this ingredient did make me pause and reflect, because I want to write fantasy in the future. And how do epic fantasy authors give credibility and believability to their stories that are set in fantastical fictional worlds? What do you do when the world of your plot is completely outside what readers are familiar with? And after some time to sit and think, I came up with a couple of components outside of a purely plausible premise that gives any story that grain of truth readers need to feel invested. The first is consistency. If your world is based on a complex magic system, maybe set in an alternative past or even an alien planet, as writers, we need to set rules and boundaries of what is capable and what is not. And we can't just go bending the rules for our protagonists every time they get into trouble. Let there be consequences. Be consistent and stay true to boundaries you set. It grounds the story and it creates a sense of trust with your readers that helps them believe in your words and your story. The second component to offer that grain of truth readers are consciously seeking, it resides wholly within the characters we create. I love a good bombastic protagonist or antagonist or even a sidekick, but if it's not true to them, if it doesn't fit, and I think we've all read characters that just feel off, then that 1 or 2 or 3 characters that aren't jiving, they can be the perfect thorn in an otherwise amazing story. As writers, I think we should always strive to create believable characters that will resonate with our audience, and furthermore, I think if we narrow down what makes a character most believable, it resides in 3 different parts. First, their actions and reactions. Take, for instance, my first read-through of Mockingjay, the final book in the Hunger Games trilogy. I was not a fan of that ending. Not to spoil it for those of you who haven't read it or seen the movies, but I personally found the ending rushed and chaotic in the books. Yet on my second read-through of the entire series, when I read the ending, it was flawless. Was it still rushed? Yes. Was it still chaotic? Absolutely. But it made perfect sense for our main squeeze Katniss to have had a mental breakdown, especially given all of the trauma that was built up from book 1, 2, and finally in book 3. I didn't appreciate that very real human reaction Susan Collins infused into Katniss. But it's beautiful in its sincerity to me now, and it makes me take a closer look at how characters act and react in every single book I read. The second way we can make characters believable is through their relationships. A common Roman trope is enemies to lovers, and I won't deny loving it, but some books go past what is, in my opinion, believable, especially when an enemies to lovers trope stems from something like abuse. Sorry, I am just not buying it. I actually share a lot of the same thoughts as D.N. Bryn, whose article I've linked below in the description. But to be extra clear and expand on this, when I say relationships, I don't just mean of the romantic variety. When writing, I think we should be cognizant of all the relationships our characters hold with each other, with the public or the society that they're in, and with themselves. What gives them their backbone, and what's their breaking point with each other? And last but not least is voice. That driving narrative voice. Find it, stick with it. That is all I ask. It's all I ask. And just a special little note to those who write historical fiction. Please stop giving your protagonists or narrative voices a modern voice. Stick to the time period's vernacular. There is nothing worse than being immersed in a wonderfully captivating, detail-filled historical fiction than a character who starts to speak in terms much too modern for their time. And that goes for both inner and outer dialogue. So, from one author to whomever is watching this, I say your plot can be as wild as your imagination takes you without having to rely heavily on a plausible premise, because there are other venues to earn your readers' trust. Key ingredient number 2, inherent conflict. As a writer, if you can set your story in a world that already has conflict built into it, bravo! You are doing yourself a major favor, because in doing so, you provide yourself with ample opportunity to develop tension and strife around your plot and characters until it can't be avoided and explodes in an epically dramatic scene. My cat just gave me a side eye. If you're blanking on what premises hold inherent conflict, here are some examples from Maass and myself. We've got courtrooms, rival families or gangs, societal caste systems, the classroom, something like teacher versus administration, maybe teacher versus student, student versus student, school against school, religion, fate. To quote Maass, it doesn't matter whether it is man against nature, man against himself, or reason against faith. Where there is conflict, there is rich soil in which to plant a story. It's our job as writers to nurture all of the inherent conflict, those little seeds that we plant, so that we can ratchet up the tension and up the stakes so that our readers have no choice but to read past their bedtimes. I think as a writer, when you've found the right inherent conflict for your story, it's when your heart starts to race a little. When ideas start to bloom one after another, and the possibilities of how that inherent conflict can change the entire direction of your story, and it just makes your head spin, that's when you know. That's when you know you've hit gold. But don't think for a second that inherent conflict can or need only be in the setting or the world that your story is in. Maass reminded even me that many great stories have rooted their inherent conflict in relationships, like mother-daughter, father-son, coach and player, boss-subordinate, neighbor to neighbor, dogs to cats. And again, as always, it's our jobs as writers to dig deep into those conflicts and worm out the delicious every single delicious confrontation we can wrap from that. Key ingredient number 3. It's originality. And out of all the ingredients to a breakout premise, there's really only so much advice that can be given when it comes to originality. Let's face it, finding that golden egg idea isn't exactly easy. I mean, it's pretty much all been done. Plot, setting, characters, but let us not be discouraged, because it is well within our power and our imaginations to turn tales already told on their head. I promise. Here are some of the examples given in writing the breakout novel for when you're floundering for originality and need a helpful nudge. 1, do the opposite of what your readers expect. Obviously. Take for reference Gone Girl or The Reader, Fight Club. And also, please keep in mind, unlikely is not a synonym for originality. 2, take a fresh perspective on familiar genre. For example, vampire lore or fairy tales. Books like Mists of Avalon or Interview with a Vampire are fantastic takes on their well-known genre. And there's also this one called a Soulmark series. I don't know, it's kind of amazing. And if you haven't read it, maybe you should give it a shot, but that's just me. It's also linked below. Number 3, fuse story elements and genres together. Fuse them together or layer tropes. Take a look at how well Outlander's done, blending science fiction and romance. It's huge. I want to delve just a little bit deeper into that last one, because unfortunately this particular section in writing the breakout novel didn't go too far into the details. Tropes and themes. Every book's got them. Every writer writes them. We do it. Do not fight me on this one. We might not do it consciously, but we do. And there's no shame in it. In fact, I think as writers, we should be very conscious about all of the tropes we use and themes we're using in our stories. To define and to know what we're using means that we can brainstorm ways to flip them and give them a new spin to make our stories more original. I mean, seriously, if Princess Bride can poke fun at fairy tales and high adventure and spin one of the cleverest enemies to lovers, sort of, tropes into a cult classic, we can absolutely create something equally epic and clever with our novels. Key ingredient number 4, gut emotional appeal. Yes, I love feeling things. I love emotions. I'm very empathetic and introspective, and I love when an author can make me cry or laugh out loud. I love when a book is so thick with tension, just saturated with it, that I have to put it down because it's making me so anxious. I need to calm my breathing and calm my heart. I love that. I love it. Just give me all of the feels. This last key ingredient, I think, is so spot on. The most important thing I want to deliver in my stories is to make my readers feel along with my characters. Yes, I want my stories to be somewhat plausible, have its own original twist, and to be rife with inherent conflict to explore, but above all else, I want my readers to be in the shoes of my characters, to step outside their lives for a time and be in the place that I've created, to feel my characters' anger and sadness, their love and lust, their losses and their triumphs, all of it. Like I said, I am a very empathetic person. It's my greatest strength and my biggest weakness. In writing, it's my superpower because I can place myself so easily in the shoes of my characters. I can see them, I can feel their emotions and experience what they're experiencing as if I was them myself. And I do my damnedest to write that down just right so my readers can experience that too. And as a weakness, it makes me like really bad at haggling and bargaining and stuff, but that's what my husband's for, it's fine. Gut emotional appeal might seem easy to accomplish. Maybe you think giving a character a tragic backstory will do just the trick. But it's so much more than that. We're all a product of our history, of our previous actions and choices, and so are the characters we make. Each and every one of them. And as writers, you'll never guess. It's our job to know our character's backstory, to understand where our characters come from and what drives them, to know why they react like they do and why they don't react at all sometimes. We have to be willing to be vulnerable in our writing, to go to dark places, be brutally honest, and write it down. That writing doesn't have to be flowery or lyrical, though it can be if that's your particular prose. At its core, as Maass so kindly pointed out, it should be sincere and heartfelt. That's where you'll always get that gut emotional appeal. When I think of gut emotional appeal, I think of Hemingway. Indulge me for just a moment. In December 1922, Hemingway lost all of his writing work. His wife of the time, Hadley, left Paris to come see him in Switzerland where he was working, per his request. And among the things that she brought with her was one suitcase filled with all of his work. Every writing draft, every original piece, every note he had ever written in companion to any of his stories. All of that in one suitcase among the others that she had brought. And she lost that one suitcase. It broke Hemingway, and he lost his confidence. Reasonably so, for quite some time. But he was committed to his craft, and some say he became a better writer because of it. Well, before Hemingway took up pen and paper again to write a new short story or a novel, he he focused all of his effort on writing the perfect sentence, knowing that if he could come up with that, he would be able to write anything. This was his sentence. For sale, baby shoes never worn. That's gut emotional appeal. It's inherent conflict, entirely plausible, and though it might not ring outright as original, the story behind that sentence very well could be. So, to recap, the first chapter of writing the Breakout novel knocked my socks off. It was phenomenal, and if writing a breakout novel is something that you want to do, you don't get to choose just one of those 4 key ingredients to a breakout premise. You need them all. You need plausibility, inherent conflict, originality, and gut emotional appeal. All of them. It's kind of a lot of work, a little bit daunting, but it's so worth it. So invest your time and do them all. Keep an eye out for my next discussion on Chapter 2 of writing the Breakout novel, The Stakes. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe.